Good morning, boys and girls. I hope you all had a good weekend and your moms had a good Mother's Day yesterday. We are on chapter 23 of Little House on the Prairie, Indian War Cry for story time today. Remember last week when we left off, they had a fire, a prairie fire. Next morning, Pa went whistling to his plowing. He came in at noon, black with soot from the burned prairie, but he was pleased. The tall grass didn't bother him anymore. But there was an uneasiness about the Indians. More and more Indians were in the creek bottoms. Mary and Laura saw the smoke from their fires by day, and at night they heard the savage voices shouting. Pa came early from the field. He did the chores early and shut Pet and Patty, Bunny and the cow and calf into the stable. They could not stay out in the yard to graze in the cool moonlight. When shadows began to gather on the prairie and the wind was quiet, the noises from the Indian camps grew louder and wilder. Pa brought Jack into the house. The door was shut and the latch string pulled in. No one could go outdoors till morning. Night crept toward the little house, and the darkness was frightening. It yelped with Indian yells, and one night it began to throb with Indian drums. In her sleep, Laura heard all the time that savage yipping and the wild throbbing drums. She heard Jack's claws clicking and his low growl. Sometimes Pa sat up in bed listening. One evening he took his bullet mold from the box under the bed. He sat for a long time on the hearth, melting lead and making bullets. He did not stop till he had used the last bit of lead. Laura and Mary lay awake and watched him. He had never made so many bullets at one time. Mary asked, "What makes you do that, Pa?" "Oh, I haven't anything else to do," Pa said, and he began to whistle cheerfully. But he had been plowing all day. He was too tired to play the fiddle. He might have gone to bed, but instead of sitting up so late making bullets. No more Indians came to the house. For days, Mary and Laura had not seen a single Indian. Mary did not like to go out of the house anymore. Laura had to play outdoors by herself, and she had a queer feeling about the prairie. It didn't feel safe. It seemed to be hiding something. Sometimes Laura had a feeling that something was watching her. Something was creeping up behind her. She turned around quickly, and nothing was there. Mr. Scott and Mr. Edwards with their guns came and talked to Pa in the field. They talked quite a while. Then they went away together. Laura was disappointed because Mr. Edwards did not come to the house. At dinner, Pa said to Ma that some of the settlers were talking about a stockade. Laura didn't know what a stockade was. Pa had told Mr. Scott and Mr. Edwards that it was a foolish notion. He told Ma, "If we need one, we need it before we could get it built. And the last thing we want to do is act like we're afraid." Mary and Laura looked at each other. They knew it was no use to ask questions. They would only be told that children must not speak at table until they were spoken to, or that children should be seen and not heard. That afternoon, Laura asked Ma what a stockade was. Ma said it was something to make little girls ask questions. That meant that grown-ups would not tell you what it was. And Mary looked a look at Laura that said, "I told you so." Laura didn't know why Pa said he must not act as if we were afraid. Pa was never afraid. Laura didn't want to act as if she were afraid, but she was. She was afraid of the Indians. Jack never laid back his ears and smiled at Laura anymore. Even while she petted him, his ears were lifted, his neck bristled, and his lips twitched back from his teeth. His eyes were angry. Every night he growled more fiercely, and every night the Indians' drums beat faster, faster, and the wild yipping rose higher and higher, faster, wilder.